Good evening, everyone. It's 7 p.m. Please take your seats. And we will commence action on the warrant in this recessed meeting of the Merrimack Valley School District. Thank you, everyone, for your patience once again. And for those of you who attended the meeting last night, thank you for your patience last night. I hope everyone got some rest. And as was the case last night, we'll endeavor to run the meeting efficiently with emphasis on the opportunity for everyone and anyone who wishes to speak, make a comment, ask a question, having an opportunity to do so. Since we already adopted the blue sheet as the rules of the meeting, these remain the rules of the meeting this evening. I trust that everyone who intends to vote has gone to the ballot clerk, checked in to verify your status as an eligible voter in your community, picked up a blue card. There's no red cards. There's no wristbands tonight. If we have paper ballot votes, we'll conduct those in the same manner that we did last night. We have decidedly fewer people this evening. Well, maybe not decidedly, but about half the number of people that we had last night, so it should move along fairly swiftly if there are paper ballot votes. I want to acknowledge Rodney Phillips, who is the moderator in the town of Loudon. Rodney, hold up your hand. Rodney has been sworn in as assistant moderator this evening. As you all know, John Herbert, who has served in that role for many years, went out with a bang last night, I suppose you could say. And for 82 years old, he did pretty well. But he said, I'm not coming back tonight. So anyway, thank you, John. And thank you, Rodney. So Rodney will be scurrying about. Those of you from Loudon know he's a very capable moderator and knows the rules, knows the practice. And also thank you once again to our supervisors and ballot clerks for coming back this evening as well. So without further ado, Randy or Tracy, do either of you have any comments before we commence with action on the warrant? Okay, everyone all set to go? We're picking up with Article 4. We completed action through Article 3 last night. Article 4, to see if the school district will approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Merrimack Valley School Board and the Merrimack Valley Support Staff Association, which calls for the following estimated increases in salaries and benefits. 2025, 2026, $448,874, 2026, 2027, $277,424, 2027, 2028, $200,318. Do I have a motion on Article 4? It's been moved. It's been moved by Jessica Wheeler Russell. Is there a second to the motion? Second by Tracy Bricky. And I will recognize Jessica Wheeler Russell to speak to the motion.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you about an issue. All right. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you about an issue that affects every student, parent, and staff member in our district, our support staff. These individuals are the backbone of our schools, ensuring that students are safe, supported, and ready to learn every day. The Merrimack Valley School Board and the Merrimack Valley Support Staff Association, MVSD, have collaborated to bring forward a collectively bargained agreement, or CBA, to our MV voters. Support staff includes our paraprofessionals, custodians, administrative assistants, bus drivers, food service workers, and others who contribute to the seamless functioning of our schools. Their roles are vital, yet often undervalued. Support staff are often the first and last faces students see each day. Bus drivers greet students in the morning, custodians ensure a clean and safe learning environment, and paraprofessionals provide one-on-one academic and emotional support to students who need it most. Like many districts across New Hampshire, we face challenges in retaining and recruiting support staff. Competitive pay is necessary to attract and keep skilled individuals who are committed to the success of our students. Without adequate compensation, we risk losing these essential workers to other industries or neighboring districts that offer better wages. An overview of some of the items in this new contract. There's an additional paid holiday in October for Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day. Health buyback increase from $1,500 to $3,000. A realignment of years of service and an adjustment to longevity payments. Minor wording changes around personal days, accumulated sick time, and course reimbursement. And the year one will see an average increase of 8.63%. The resulting warrant article will read for the 25 to 26 year, $448,000, $874, $277,424, and $200,318. In conclusion, increasing pay for our support staff isn't just about numbers in a budget, it's about valuing the people who make our schools successful. It's about showing respect for their hard work, attracting and retaining talent, and ensuring that every student in our district has the support that they need to thrive. I now open the floor to feedback on Article 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Article 4 is open to discussion and question. Yes, sir. Please state your name and town.
Hi, I'm Adam Russell. I'm from Pennacook. First, I'd like to thank the members of the negotiations committee on the board who worked with our support staff and their agents to come up with this plan. I think, as Jess said just a moment ago, our support staff are incredibly important to our district, and they deserve the benefits that they are earning and the increases and other I guess benefits that the negotiations here represent. That said, I think this is a wonderful, wonderful negotiation, and I make a movement to move the question.
I am not going to recognize that motion just yet. I'm going to allow those who are in line who wish to speak to do so. Hold it in reserve, because I'm simply not recognizing it at this time. And as just a general comment, I think it's important and beneficial for everyone to allow a few people to speak to the issue before a motion is made to move the question. So set that aside. I'll come back to you. All right. And do you have any questions, or is okay? I'll recognize the next person in line.
Lisa Laughlin from Loudon. Pam on bus 1, Mrs. Muzzy at Loudon Elementary School, Mr. Larry, Mr. Lenny. My kids have been out of Loudon Elementary School for a long time. Mrs. Muzzy's role is now played by Jen York, and I still interact with her to this day because I have donations and Jen knows where they're needed. The middle school staff was amazing. I apologize to them, but I've kind of blocked out middle school. But Samantha Stokes at the high school, my son's senior year, was my savior. Teachers are the bricks of our school system. Support staff is the mortar. They are the ones that hold it all together. We already have a hard time finding and keeping support staff. Please do not take your frustration with the administration out on the people who do the hard work day to day. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
David Hemingway, Webster. Kind of two parts. The first that I was expecting to do was, I know that you mentioned a few different pieces of the support staff, bus drivers, et cetera, but that covers a lot of different positions. So I was wondering if you had both a number of support staff currently and could give a little bit more of an overview of the kinds of positions that are actually covered.
Well, Kathleen is looking up the number of support staff folks. I'll go through some of the different tiers, and there's a lot, but I'll just give you some sort of general bits. Food service, classroom building assistants, custodians, paraprofessionals, bus drivers, non-CDL and CDL, administrative assistants, library assistants, media program assistants, office managers, speech assistants, maintenance tech, computer tech, interpreter, program assistant, mechanic, maintenance tech 2. So it really spans quite a wide spectrum of all of the things that we need to keep the district going.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to understand that we're not talking about one or two types of positions or a particular set of support specialists, but really this is a wide berth of people that everybody in the district relies upon. And so I am definitely in support of the way that this has been negotiated and in support of all of these staff members. My second question, based on last night, is more of a question on the way that this is written to make sure that I understand it. This is written with a dollar figure, but that says that it is an estimated increase in salaries and benefits. So when we vote, are we voting on a dollar figure that will be included in future budgets to match that estimate, or are we voting on the agreement that will say that however many staff are still able to be employed, they will get that same agreement?
Voting on those dollar amounts, those will be the things that will show up in the 2900 function in subsequent years. You've heard us talk about how things are moved from there, so it may be year 2 of one of the collectively bargained agreements. But it's those dollar amounts that will show up for each of the next 3 years. So hopefully when this is approved, that first number in year 1 will be part of next year's budget, the following year, that second year. So yes, there are going to be some changes. We could never lock down because it's such a moving target, but those are the numbers that would be put into the budget.
Okay, so then it's using these numbers for budget, and it's not accounting for gain or loss of support staff.
Correct. We assume there'll be some of both of those. And
okay. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Liam Jewell, Pennacook.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
So there are 265 support staff members.
Speak up. If I can't see the head table out of my peripheral vision, so you got to shout. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So there are 2 key concerns I'd like to address tonight, one regarding the voting process and the other related to the article in question. So first, as we witnessed last night, the current structure of the secret ballot process creates the potential for excessive delays that disproportionately impact parents with young children and individuals with early work commitments. When a process allows for repeated prolonged voting well into the night, it effectively limits participation for many taxpayers who deserve an equal opportunity to have their voices heard. Additionally, I want to know what steps can be taken next year to ensure fair access to the microphone so that all participants have an equal chance to contribute to the discussion. When lengthy delays dominate the floor, the result is an unbalanced. I understand that.
I'll recognize the individual to continue with his inquiry.
I want to understand the voting process, which is related to this warrant article, and I am mostly done. When lengthy delays dominate the floor, the result's an unbalanced process that, whether intentional or not, restricts engagement from those who cannot stay indefinitely. For those with babysitters tonight, it may be wise to notify them that this could run later than expected, and looking ahead to next year, you might want to put away a few extra dollars for the babysitter. Now, I would like to hear from the moderator about what changes are being considered for next year to ensure that every voter in the district has a fair and equal opportunity to participate. That was not the case last night, as reflected in the declining vote counts and the steady departure of families and workers with each
I get the
successive
point.
ballot.
One mic, first of all. Much of the confusion and chaos, and it hasn't been an issue in the past, it was definitely an issue last night, and I'll accept some responsibility for difficulty in confirming or affirming who was in line before whom. When you have two mics, that's difficult. So, as you can see, we addressed that issue this evening. To the second part of your inquiry, if a request for secret ballot is made and it is made by 5 individuals present in the room and the names of those individuals are presented to me in writing, I will recognize an individual's right to request a secret ballot. And we'll try as best we can to run that process as efficiently as we can. Clearly, there's more that we can do to make that process work better. We'll probably next year, if we have this number of people again, or anticipate this number of people again, we'll have more volunteers, more election workers involved in the process to try to make it run more smoothly. But I'm not going to deny someone their right to request a secret ballot if it is duly requested or duly presented.
And I don't think you should. I just think that it creates issues when people are not allowed to stay and actually vote because they have to leave to take care of other obligations. Speaking
Noted.
to the question, we cannot have strong schools without strong staff. Our support staff, the bus drivers, aides, custodians, cafeteria workers, keep our schools running every day. Yet for too long, their wages have lagged behind, making it hard to retain good people. The reality is this: if we don't offer fair wages, we lose good people. That leads to higher turnover, shortages, and disruptions to the kids' education. This agreement is not extravagant. It's a very modest, responsible investment in keeping experienced, dedicated staff in our schools. Without it, we risk losing them to neighboring districts. A yes vote isn't just about fairness, it's about stability for our kids and our schools. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Kevin DeLange, Pennacook. I'm a teacher. I teach at Franklin High School, social studies. I'm also the secretary of the Franklin Education Association, which is the collective bargaining unit for SAU 18. I've been through union negotiations. I've sat at the school board as we have negotiated our teacher contracts. I sat as the city council, in that case, approved those, okay? I want to support our paraprofessionals, and I will. I'm going to vote for this. I think we should vote for this. But I think this district has a problem with transparency. When I went to the city council and the school board meetings to approve our teacher contract, the CBA was there for everybody to see. I don't think anything disingenuous is going on here. But we saw this with the administrators last year. People begged for transparency. Can we see what's going on? And we were told repeatedly that we could not. I think that a lot of the anger and things that come in this community and at this meeting are because there isn't enough transparency. There's no reason why people can't see the CBA instead of just bottom line dollars. Because what we've seen is that the administrator CBA was not what we thought it was. It said $0. That wasn't true. I think it would have been approved anyway if it had been truthful. And we see numbers now that are different than what we were showed last year. So my plea to you guys is just to show everything. There's no reason why that's a private document. I've been through the process. It can be shown. So I hope that in the future, we can see those documents so that everyone here doesn't feel like they're being cheated or bamboozled or whatever, because I don't think that's the case. But by being secretive and not showing it, that's the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next commenter. Yes.
Therese Bastarash, Loudon, New Hampshire. You've answered some of the questions. I wanted to know how many students, which was 265. How much of these dollar amounts is salary versus benefit increases? There like or even a rough, kind of to the last speaker. I feel like we have some information, but then you try and reconcile it. And how much of this is a salary increase for this demographic of employees? Is it an 8% increase for them year over year for hourly wages? Do we know?
The effective increase over 3 years is 15.86%.
And that's for the salary or?
Salaries,
So
yeah.
it's 15% over all 3 years or each year?
15% over 3 years. The first year was 8.63%.
Okay. And then did I hear you say correctly? I just want to make sure I understand. If they elect not to take the benefits through the district, they get $3,000 returned to them?
That's the buyback, yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
2 more speakers, and then I will recognize the motion to move the question.
Les Seaboyer, Loudon, New Hampshire. So if I heard you correctly, that not quite plus or minus $900,000 over 3 years' time equates to a total of a 15% increase in their salaries and benefits, yes?
Yeah, 15.86%.
Okay. So I understand retention, I understand the rest of it, but I can assure you that over the next 3 years, most people in the private sector are not going to see anywhere near that for an increase. It's not going to happen. Businesses aren't going to do that. And as it stands right now, the economy and the cost to everyone here, unless they're in that upper tier of 500,000 plus a year, can't eat that. So I understand how collective bargaining works. I've been involved in it on both sides of the table. The challenge, with no disrespect intended, is this. Public office, public service, schools, police, fire, all of it, they're all needed. But they also need to consider the fact that the people, through their property taxes and their registrations and all the other things they pay, fund that. I would respectively submit that schools, which we're discussing now, and I understand there's multiple towns here, need to be run a little more like a business with a little bit tighter line on items. Because ultimately, you're driving people out of these towns that have been here forever because the tax base that they have to pay now they can't endure it. And I understand the theory, oh, well, let them move, let them sell their house and move, and somebody else will come in who can. Question is, why? Somebody's lived in a town for 20, 30 years, 40 years, multiple generations. Why should they be taxed out? To accommodate, no disrespect intended towards any of these people, a 15% increase over 3 years that I can assure you the vast majority of people here won't see in 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Final comment on Article 4.
Hi, my name is Lisa Ronald. I'm from Pennacook, and I have a long-term educator friend, very wise man, who always said to me, my hope for every child in every school has someone, an adult, that they can trust and that they're comfortable with. And I agree with that. And I am support staff, and I hope that I'm that to kids in the high school. A lot of times we think of that trusted adult as faculty, and I see that every day. I see kids have faculty members that they trust and they're comfortable with and they want to go to. But I also see it with everyone else. I see it with the food service people. I see it with our custodians. I see it with the bus drivers. I see it with all the support staff. And I know many of our support staff live in district. And when you live in district at Merrimack Valley, you come with a vested interest in these children. I do, and I know most of the people that I work with do as well. So I feel like if we don't have enough paras, we can't find paras, and we can't find bus drivers, we can't find food service help, and because we're not competitive. And I have kids that come into my office that have a part-time job that make more money hourly than most of the support staff. And that's kind of like, oof, maybe I should go work at that place. And so we have to be competitive with all of these positions. And I feel like we're always the last on the docket. But I feel that we are so important to all of the kids that need that one person, that bus driver, the first person other than their family to say good morning and good night at the end of the day. I see the food services people just loving when the kids come in and want that cinnamon roll or want their favorite whatever, and they know what their favorite food is. They know what their favorite thing is to eat. And with the paras, we have to have them. We can't find them. So we're paying exorbitant amounts of money for agency people to come in. They're short term. They're there, they're gone. Where people that are hired, and especially if they're in district, they're going to stay. I've known paras that have been with kids for years and still have relationships with these students. You can't buy that through an agency, but we can get that through making these jobs competitive and pay enough that they want to come and they want to stay. So thank you.
Okay. Mr. Russell, I'll recognize your motion.
Just again, I'm Adam Russell from Pennacook, and I'd like to make a motion to move the question.
A motion has been made to move the question. It's seconded by Lisa Laughlin. It's a non-debatable motion. If you're in favor of moving the question, you're in favor of closing debate on Article 4. If you're opposed to moving the question, you are in support of continuing debate on Article 4. Are you ready for the question? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the ayes have it, and we'll move now to a vote on Article 4. Are you ready for the question? If you're in favor of Article 4, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes have it, and Article 4 is adopted.
Julie Nudd Webster, I'd like to restrict reconsideration on Article 4, please.
A motion has been made to restrict reconsideration on the affirmative vote on Article 4. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Russell has seconded the motion. Does everyone understand what restrict reconsideration means? If you're in favor of restricting reconsideration, you are in favor of foreclosing on any future action on Article 4 this evening. If you're opposed, there is the potential for action on Article 4 to be reconsidered this evening. Are you ready for the question? All in favor of restricting reconsideration on the affirmative motion on Article 4, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion to restrict reconsideration is adopted. Article 5, shall the school district, if Article 4 is defeated, authorize the governing body to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 4 cost items only. This is a contingent article, which means that it is only necessary in the event that Article 4 was defeated. Therefore, I would invite a motion from the body to pass over Article 5.
Or table it.
Or table it. Either will serve the purpose. I prefer pass over just because it's contingent. Is there a second to that? Bill, did you make that motion? Okay. Is there a second to the motion to pass over Article 5? There is. If you're in favor of passing over Article 5, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And we pass over Article 5. We move to Article 6. Did you have a point of order or question?
No, I want to speak on this.
Okay. Article 6, to see if the school district will vote to authorize indefinitely until rescinded to retain year-end unassigned general funds in an amount not to exceed in any fiscal year 5% of the current fiscal year's net assessment in accordance with RSA 198:4-B Roman 2. This requires a majority vote, and it is recommended by the school board. Do I have a motion on Article 6? It's been moved by Sally Hirsch Dickinson. Is there a second to the motion? It's been seconded by Jessica Wheeler Russell, and I now open Article 7 to a comment from Sally Hirsch Dickinson.
Good evening. Thank you for your time.
Sorry, Article 6. I said Article 7.
That's right. Good evening. Thank you for your time, attention to, and engagement with the work of the Merrimack Valley School District. Once again, Article 6 reads, to see if the school district will vote to authorize indefinitely until rescinded to retain year-end unassigned general funds in an amount not to exceed in any fiscal year 5% of the current fiscal year's net assessment, in accordance with RSA 198:4-B2. The school board recommends this article. New Hampshire RSA 198:4-B2, commonly referred to as the, quote, retained surplus, unquote, provision, provides school districts, including multi-town school districts, with the ability to retain a portion of their unexpended appropriations, that is, surplus funds, at the end of a fiscal year. Here's how that benefits a multi-town school district. First, there's financial stability through reserve fund creation. This provision allows the district to retain up to 5% of its net assessment, that is, local taxes raised for the school budget, as a reserve fund. There's also financial stability through emergency use. This reserve can be used for emergencies, unanticipated expenses, or revenue shortfalls without requiring immediate taxpayer impact through special meetings or emergency appropriations. Another benefit is tax rate stabilization. We can avoid large tax swings. By maintaining a surplus, the district can reduce tax rate volatility for towns within the district, helping to smooth out tax burdens from year to year. And we can plan for the future. The surplus can offset potential increases in taxes. This is particularly useful in years with higher budgetary needs or reduced state or federal funding. Finally, a retained surplus allows for voter control. There's accountability. Voters maintain oversight since the decision to use retained funds typically requires approval from the school board, which is accountable to the public, and there's transparency. Retained surpluses and their uses are publicly documented, ensuring transparency in financial management. RSA 198:4-B2 empowers multi-town school districts to manage their finances responsibly, reduce the taxpayer burden, and address challenges proactively, all while maintaining accountability to the community. I now open the floor to feedback on Article 6. Thank you.
All right, Article 6 is open to comment, question. Yes, ma'am.
Heather Spears, Bosquen. To the board and administration, I'd like to explain that the article as written and the statute as written do not specify an upper limit to which this fund can grow. The wording expresses how much can be added to it each year, a maximum amount, but there is not wording to say how high the fund can grow. And I'm assuming, since there's not wording to specify interest, that the interest or any earnings from this fund will go back into the fund, but perhaps it will go to the general fund. So could you answer to that?
Who will respond to that question?
I can take that.
Mr. Shaughnessy.
Hi, yeah, great question. So it's a 5% contingency fund. So every year the board can retain up to 5% of surplus. It stays in a contingency fund. It's for unanticipated expenses. And if it's not spent at the end of that fiscal year, it is used to offset the following year's tax effort. So it never grows more than 5%. It just rolls over.
Doesn't the general fund do that, the unreserved?
Yeah, it becomes part of the general fund. It's carried from year to year as part of the general fund. It doesn't
Isn't
grow.
that already what is done with the unreserved fund?
So, okay, unreserved fund balance in this current fiscal year, if it's unspent, will offset taxes next year, okay? This allows the board to hang on to unassigned fund balance that would have lapsed for the following fiscal year. They can keep up to 5%, and at the end of that year, it lapses. So it's a way to hang on to a small part of that fund balance, prevent it from lapsing, and hang on to it for the year as like a contingency backup fund.
I don't feel like the law or this article specifies that that money will go back into anything. I think it could continue to grow based on this wording.
No, I mean, first of all, the wording in the warrant article is statutorily prescribed. So this is the language that's in the statute. It's also the language that's recommended by DRA. And this is the law. I mean, it's a one-year contingency fund. It will, by operation of 32.7, lapse back to offset next year's taxes. So
Can you
don't-
explain the portion of the law?
Were you done
It says
responding
that
to the first part, Jim?
it goes back?
I mean, the statutory reference is right in the warrant article. It's RSA 194 B, Roman numeral 2, so section 2 is actually the specific part of the law that talks about the 5% contingency.
Yes, could you please read the wording that says that that goes back? Because a contingency fund, I believe, can be maintained.
Give me a moment.
Let Mr. Shaughnessy look up I'm presuming he's trying to find the statute. I'll recognize the next speaker in line.
Which part of it? I'm looking at it.
Hold on, Louise. He may have the answer.
Let me just read section 2, and then I can actually read another part of the law that ties into this. It's in a different section of the law. But it says, notwithstanding any other provision of law, a school district, by vote of the legislative body, may authorize, and that's what we're doing today, indefinitely until specific rescission, the school district to retain any unused portion of the year-end unassigned general funds from the preceding fiscal year in subsequent fiscal years. That's what I was trying to say. Provided that the total amount of year-end unassigned general funds does not exceed in any fiscal year 5% of the current fiscal year's net assessment. So that means it's 5%. It can never cap at that. In the other provision of law, let me just find that. I referenced it before. It's RSA 32.7. And RSA 32.7 says annual meeting appropriations shall cover anticipated expenditures for one fiscal year. All appropriations shall lapse at the end of the fiscal year, and any unexpended portion thereof shall not be expended without further appropriation. You tie those two together, and it stands for the proposition they can keep the 5%. Everything else lapses. At the end of that fiscal year, that 5% lapses as well. That's my final answer.
Okay.
So you're very clearly saying that that money goes back to the unreserved fund, that it's unspent.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next speaker, please.
Louise Andrews from Salisbury. I read this article several times, and then I reached out to some people I have a high respect for that are more knowledgeable in law and everything else. And they all told me the same thing, because I thought I was biased because I was against the article. Some of them told me this was a slush fund. For years, this school district lived within its means. And there was fund balances, and they went back to the towns. And now, all of a sudden, last year, we had a $2 million deficit, and nobody really takes responsibility for it. Everybody picks on special ed and maintenance, but I'll tell you, us people out here, we don't even know what's going on. So as far as this article goes, I'm totally against it, because our school district, as much as we should educate our children Our school district has got to learn to live within their means, because each and every one of us out here in the real world, we have to. Thank you.
All right, would anyone care to respond? Okay. Next commenter, please.
Jen Mercer from Loudon. I do not support this article. The SAU and school board have recently proven to be unable to manage the budget with this $2 million overrun. So why do you think it's a good idea to give you free rein with any leftover money? Transparency is already an issue, yet Sally says this will be a benefit. How about we give any money back to the taxpayers instead of putting it in a slush fund? It should also be noted that if this passes, then the likelihood of us ever rescinding it in the future is 0.
Next commenter, please.
Jesse Schmidt, Pennacook. I want to understand something really quick before I make this next comment. With this, it is only from the general fund that this would be pulled, correct?
Yeah, it's taken from what's remaining in fund balance at the end of the fiscal year. If there is no money remaining, then there's nothing in the contingency fund, correct?
Given that this body has misappropriated funds and mismanaged funds to the tune of $2 million, is what I believe Randy had pointed out yesterday at the beginning. My question is, in the past 3 years, how much money would have actually been pulled had this been in place? By year, please.
Randy.
I don't have that information, but I can say this also goes to a previous comment. The average fund balance over the last 10 years has been 1%. It's recommended that we have about a 10% fund balance, which is something that we've been talking about. This isn't about a slush fund. This is things that are recommended from DRA and GFOA as being fiscally responsible things to do to have these things in place. 10% fund balance, a contingency fund, and well-funded expendable trusts. As when this was introduced, all of this has to come before the public, and it's very transparent if this money is used for, and as Jim pointed out, only for unforeseen things. It's not that you can just add to the budget and decide to do something else with it.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hemingway.
Dave Hemingway, Webster. Before I begin talking about the contingency fund, could you please tell us what the balance is of the unsigned fund currently?
We don't really have an estimate for the unassigned fund balance, but because we're absorbing the $1 million, we're probably not going to see much. So each of these next 3 articles, both to put money in the special ed expendable trust as well as the maintenance expendable trust, I don't imagine that we're going to have the sort of balance. And that's why this one says up to. So that's something that once the fund balance and once the books are closed on the year, that's when DRA will ask in the early fall if the district is going to do any amount up to 5%.
Thank you. So I want to point out to everybody here and anybody that may not understand fully, there are several different funds that are being talked about. The first that I just brought up is the unsigned fund. It goes year to year. It's sitting there all the time. One of the ways that you kind of think of it is cash flow. This is that 10% figure that you've mentioned that you want to get back up to. The second would be this contingency fund. And anything that would be a, for lack of a better word, excess or profit or however you want to state it, that comes through the year can go into the contingency fund, or if the contingency fund is not there, it can do what you've stated as your purpose, which is to build up the unsigned fund, which you're trying to get to 10%. The third fund that people need to be aware of, it's also commonly talked about, is the general fund. That's the current operating budget with revenues and expenditures. And so when there is excess at the end of the fiscal year in the general fund, that can then turn over to one of the other funds. So, with that said, I fully support the concept of a retained surplus contingency fund. And we've used these in town a couple times. Thankfully, we don't have to always use them. They work a little differently in towns as well, but the concept is a very good one. This year, however, the budget had a major issue and has both made that your fund zero currently, or negative, depending on how you look at it, and you're trying to build that, and the contingency fund will prevent that from happening. This year is also the year that the budget had that major issue and put trust in the school district financial process at a low point. And then this contingency fund puts trust in you to use it as you see fit after a public hearing.
Is there a question, Mr. Hemingway? Is
And
there a question, Mr. Hemingway?
more a point about all of this, in that you have to be careful, especially looking at all of the other articles and your pointed and stated goals of increasing all of the funds, that this fund doesn't trump all of the others, and make sure that this is the only one that can get funded. For these reasons, I will be voting against this at this time, but I highly encourage you to bring it back next year or the year after, when you expect to have a healthy set of funds already, and hopefully have brought back all the transparency and trust that people are really looking for. Thank you.
If I can just make one point, it's not automatically 5%. It's up to, the board could choose to 0%, 1%. So that's entirely after the books are closed, a board's decision to report to DRA to hold that money in a contingency fund.
Thanks, Randy. I want to respond to the extent folks were paying close attention and trying to understand now what we're talking about in terms of funds. There was a little bit of an inaccurate representation. You have a general fund, that's the money appropriated at the beginning of the year. At the end of the year, whatever you don't spend is called year-end unassigned fund balance. It's not a fund. It doesn't get carried from year to year. It's your unassigned fund balance. Often we refer to that as your surplus. If there's money left over at the end of the year, that would be what is used to fund this contingency fund. Also, the way these articles are, the next articles are worded, if there was money left over, that's what would be used to fund the maintenance expendable trust and the special ed fund. So there isn't, I just don't want folks to think there currently is a unassigned fund balance fund that exists that's just carrying over year to year. That's not a thing. So technically right now, you have money in your general fund operating budget, and you can tend to predict at this point what you might have at the end of the year, but there's no real way of knowing because it's March and we have a couple of months left until the end of the fiscal year. Thank you.
Okay.
Please, Pastor Ashlowden. So 5% would be $2.4 million based on last night's approved budget. My question is, you've got this kind of, whatever we're calling it, that we're talking about now, and then you've got special ed, and then you've got the maintenance. What hierarchy, I mean, I would hope we would look at special ed emergency money versus kind of a slush fund, as someone else called it, or surplus fund. But my thing is, if we have that much of a surplus at the end of the fiscal year, I really do believe it should be going back to the taxpayers. Yes, I understand you do a public hearing on how you're going to spend that $2.4 million, but most of us are not going to be able to attend those meetings and have any say or weigh in on those votes. We don't get to vote except for this once a year. So I don't support this at all.
I do just want to point out that it's 5% of the district assessment and not of the budget. So that would be the revenue subtracted from the budget. So in this case, the district assessment would be 32 million, so it would be 1.6 million. And these are articles, this was recommended to us by DRA, So this isn't something that they just said, this is smart, fiscally responsible fund to have. And we've been trying to lay out a path for financial well-being.
Yes, sir.
Les C. Boyer Loudon, you're probably going to see a lot of me tonight and may not like me in the end. I have a question for the board. First of all, in the last 5 years, last 5 fiscal years, what's your average surplus been per year?
1%.
A 1%. Okay.
Over the last 10 years.
Over the last 10 years, you've had a 1% per year. Okay. And that 1% is cumulative, yes? So if it's 1% per year on average, it goes into the fund, goes into the fund, goes into the fund, correct?
No, it does not.
It does not. So what's done with it then, please?
That goes back to offset taxes for the following year.
Which go up every year. Yep, they go up every year. So I've been looking at the paperwork you provided us, and I'm going to use round numbers, plus or minus, average per year cost, state average is about $21,000 per student. Merrimack Valley was just a little under 20, let's say 19,000 for the sake of argument. Now, I'm sure you all work very hard to provide an excellent education for people, and you do your best in your due diligence. Why is it that a charter school on average charges between $12,000 and $15,000 a year to give statistically a far superior education?
Is it relevant to the subject matter of the article?
Well, the subject matter of the article is this, in that it's fine to say we'd like to take up to that 5%. And then you say, well, we've averaged 1% over the last 10 years, and that's gone to help offset taxes. But those taxes go up every year. So I find it, with all due respect to the board, somewhat disingenuous when you say, well, we're only going to raise your taxes $600 this year for education, and I'm using just an arbitrary number, per person per household.
Okay.
This process...
Can I ask, is there a question?
The question is, where is your fiscal responsibility? We all have to have our fiscal responsibility and make sure that we can pay our
taxes. Is it relevant to the subject matter of the article?
The subject matter of the article is simple. I'm against it. I think it's a waste of taxpayer money, and I'm going to vote against it.
Okay. Next commenter.
So I apologize for my
Name?
Liam Jewell Pennicook.
Thank you.
I apologize for my previous tone. I'm a little tired, like many of us tonight. So unlike state government, which has reserves for unexpected costs, our district is forced to operate on a razor-thin margin, 1%. That's crazy. Meaning any unexpected expense, like a spike in special education placements or a major building repair, becomes a financial crisis. This article allows us to set aside a small reserve, up to 5%, to handle these situations responsibly instead of scrambling for emergency cuts or sudden tax increases, which nobody in this room wants. This is not extra spending. It's simply smart financial planning. That's why it's the default recommendation that the board is trying to follow. A yes vote ensures that we don't set ourselves up for failure in the future.
Okay. Mr. Russell.
Adam Russell from Pennacook again. Hello, everyone. I am in favor of this article, and I'd like to take the moment to move the question.
A motion has been made to move the question. Is there a second to that motion? I will recognize that motion. I will allow the three people who are behind you to speak to the article before we take a vote on that motion. Yes, sir.
Sean Kitson, Loudon. I think you're using the 10 years figure, but I was only going to ask for 4. But at the end of the year, for the last 10 years, has any of that money gone back to the towns? And if so, could you provide the average that's gone back to the towns?
1%.
Has gone back in total for all the towns to divvy up, or 1% to each town?
So that's just an average. No, it's all part of the formula. It goes back in to offset the following year's taxes.
So every year, the towns have gotten money back, and that the budget you've always had a surplus at the
Right,
end of
like you don't get a check, right? There's not like, here's your $32 or whatever. It just becomes part of that, of that revenue to offset it. So that's one of the reasons for the plan that we laid out for the financial well-being to get to that 10%. So, let's round this number, like $5 million is what really should be left at the end of the year. That money would go to offset taxes. Same with this contingency fund. This isn't a slush fund that's being held. This goes for 1 year in case there's a problem. It's like having an emergency fund. At the end of that year, that goes back to offset taxes. So it delays that for 1 year. But with all of these things, this is part of the financial well-being package, right, which we've been kind of talking about. That would go back each year, and this contingency fund just gets delayed a year, so that up to 5% number.
And then do you have to vote every year on the percentage that you're going to reserve?
The board would decide how much of that percentage. Like this year, it would be 0% because if there's money left, they'd want to put it probably towards the special ed expendable trust, which is the next one, the next article down. But so a lot of years, it might be 0 because if we're low, as we try to build up to that 10%, and then there may be, if we got to that healthy financial place where we're trying to get to have that, we may want to pull that 5%. And again, it's still going back to the taxpayers, just gets delayed by that 1 year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Natalie LaFlamme, Boscawen. Just a question. I think I'm just looking for it to be explained a little differently. So what happens if you don't have this money retained? Or I guess another way, I understand it's recommended, but what are the cons of not passing this article?
Randy?
Sure.
Jim?
So again, it's like an emergency fund. So by passing it, so let's go to a financial future down the road where we have a 10% fund balance and we decide we're going to retain the 5% up to the district assessment. So this year 1.6 million, and it's there. It's an emergency fund. If something bad happens, just like an emergency fund you would have, in your home, your personal finance. If something goes wrong, that's there. If nothing bad happens, which you hope, that emergency fund stays there. And in this particular case, it goes back to offset taxes the following year.
Okay, thanks.
And one final commenter before we move the question.
Joel Eugenides, Salisbury. Just as some clarification, if you don't mind, I keep hearing the phrase, any unexpected expense. Are there any limitations on what exactly this money can be spent on, or is it just up to your discretion?
The statute's a great question. Again, the statute used to limit the expenditure of the fund to emergencies and require certain approvals. It doesn't. It's a contingency fund. It's in the discretion of the board. It's for unanticipated funds. So a lot of my school district clients have these funds. It's pretty common. What typically happens is the superintendent will call me and say, hey, we had this thing happen. Is that an appropriate use for a contingency fund? And we talk about, well, is this something you budgeted for? And if it's something in your operating budget, if it's an operational cost, then no, you can't use your contingency fund for that. If it's not, if it's a surprise event or something catastrophic, yes, you can use your contingency fund for that. It's typically the analysis I go through.
Okay, but it is up to just the school board? Okay. I'm all for fiscal responsibility. I'm all for a positive cash flow and maintaining a cash flow that works. I do have one major fear of how this will be used in the future, however. The way it is now, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Your major fear.
Yes, thank you. My major fear is that this money will be used in the future for expenses on it'll be used as a way to bypass the voting process. You'll have this money in your pocket that you'll be able to use for whatever expense that you deem fit, whether we agree with it or not, and then you would just be able to use that money for expenses without having to come to us and ask for appropriations and have us vote on things. And for that reason, I am, unless I'm completely wrong here.
Well, I'll
recognize Mr.
Sorry,
Shaughnessy.
sorry, Mr. Moderator. It's a good point, but just remember, this is a bottom line budget. The board is not asking for you to approve specific expenditures. They're asking for you to approve an operating budget, and the board already has the discretion to decide how it spends those monies. It has transfer authority within the lines in the operating budget. So the board already has that discretion, but that's a good point.
But this would be giving them additional money that would have otherwise come back to us. And for that reason, I'm against this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Voss, you were not in line when the motion to move the question was recognized.
I know. I just want to give an example that might help people understand.
No, I'm not going to recognize you. I'm sorry. There is a motion on the floor to move the question. Everyone understands the purpose of that motion. Are you ready for the question? All in favor of moving the question and ending debate on Article 6, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we move to the pending motion, which is the adoption of Article 6 as presented. Yes, you can request a standing card vote, yes. I will recognize that. Andrew Perella, can I ask you to organize 5 counters for me? So as we did last night, the floor and the head table is Group 1. The right bank of bleachers up to the center guardrail is Group 2. Group 3 is the balance of the right bleachers. Group 4 is the forward section of the left bank of bleachers, and Group 5 is the remainder of the left bank of bleachers. We need 5 counters. And what I will do in each section, we're not going to do it all at once. What I will do in each section is ask for those who are in favor to raise their cards. We'll count. I'll document. I'll ask those who are against to raise their cards. We'll count. I'll document. Proceed through all 5, tally them up, and I'll present the results of the vote. Can you turn the mic on, please? Point of order?
Sir, there's been a number of acronyms used that I'm not sure 100% of the audience understands. Could I request the board members frequently to spell it out just a little bit more clearly so people understand what you're referencing?
So, acronym alert. I heard DRA, I heard GFOA. Were there others, Mr. Nesbitt?
I'm not sure if there were many, but I know I was guilty of it teaching, so...
So noted. Henceforth, please try to avoid using acronyms. And,
thank you.
Thank you for the comment. Are we all set? All right. All in favor of Article 6 as introduced in Group 1 in the head table, please raise your cards. And behind you, Andrew? Okay. 63 in the affirmative. If you're opposed to Article 6 in Group 1, please raise your cards. (21) in the negative. Group 2. John? Go ahead. I'm sorry. All in favor of Article 6 in Group 2, please raise your cards. 60 in the affirmative. Those opposed, please raise your cards. Group 2. Eight in the negative. Group 3, Lynn, all in favor, raise your cards. Forty-one in the affirmative. 42 in the affirmative. Those opposed? What is the number? 43. Okay, those opposed in group 3, please raise your cards. $18 in the negative. Group 4, who's our counter for group 4? Group 4, all in favor of Article 6, please raise your cards. $18 in the affirmative. Those opposed, please raise your cards. Group 4. I'm sorry. 39 in the negative. Group 5, all in favor of Article 6, please raise your cards. Nine in the affirmative. Those opposed in Group 5? $67 in the negative. A total of 346 votes were made, 193 in the affirmative and 153 in the negative, and Article 6 is adopted. For what purpose does the member rise?
Me?
Yeah.
Mr. Moderator, I would like to make a motion that we restrict reconsideration of
Okay, a
Article
motion
6.
has been made to restrict reconsideration of the affirmative vote on Article 6. Is there a second to the motion, Mr. Russell? Everyone understands the purpose of the vote. If you're in favor of restricting reconsideration of the adoption of Article 6, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and further action on Article 6 is restricted from reconsideration. Article 7, point of order?
Yes. Tom Liberty, Bosquen. I was wondering if we have another card vote, since we're considerably smaller than yesterday, can we do it all at one time?
Sure.
Thank you.
That's fine. It's a little easier. Well, it was definitely easier last night to do it that way, but you're right, Tom. There's fewer people. Fair enough. Do you have a point of order, a procedural question? Okay. We'll move to Article 7. Article 7, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $300,000 to be added to the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund previously established for the purposes of supporting student services, with said funds to come from unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1, 2025. No additional amount to be raised from taxation. The school board recommends this article. Is there a motion on Article 7? It's been moved by, who made the motion? I'm sorry, I'm looking. Julia Jones. Is there a second to the motion? Tracy Bricky has seconded the motion, and I'll recognize Julia Jones to speak to Article 7.
No? Is it on now?
Yes.
Okay.
Just
Yay.
speak right into the mic.
Okay, I won't yell. All right. The Merrimack Valley School District is requesting voters to approve adding $300,000 to the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund. This fund serves as an emergency reserve to ensure the district can responsibly address unforeseen and rising costs associated with special education services. Special education expenses often fluctuate due to unpredictable needs, such as new student enrollments requiring specialized services or changes in current student support plans. These costs are critical for providing equitable education opportunities, but can create significant financial strain if unplanned. By contributing to the trust, the district aims to be fiscally responsible by preparing for unexpected expenses without disrupting other educational programs, maintain compliance with state and federal mandates for special education, minimize the need for mid-year budget adjustments or emergency measures. Your support will help ensure that all students receive the necessary resources for a successful education while keeping the district financially stable. Additional points: money can only be added to the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund through voter approval at the annual meeting. Money can be withdrawn from this fund only after the public hearing. At the public hearing, the board will provide information as to why money from the fund is being withdrawn. The board will listen to feedback from the attendees, and then at the board meeting, the board will vote to take action. I now open the floor to feedback on Article 7. Thank you.
Article 7 is open to discussion and amendment. Yes, sir.
Sean Kitson, Loudon. My question is to the Loudon representative, Ms. Vincent. Could you explain to us why $300,000 is a justifiable amount to put into the Special Education Trust Fund?
Exactly, but I believe
Speak right into the mic, Laura. Thank you.
I don't remember exactly, but I think it was $500,000 that we had to take out earlier this year. So $300,000 doesn't go very far with special ed.
And this doesn't mean we'd automatically put 300,000 in. We would put up to 300,000 in.
So just to provide a little context, I was at this meeting where the question came up to put money into the expendable trust fund, and I encourage all of you to go back and look at that meeting it was the budget meeting for that. Originally, the motion was made by Ms. Vincent to open it for money to go into the fund, and nobody knew how much money to put into this fund. The consensus around the table, and you can go back and watch the video, I don't know what to put into this fund. I have no idea what we need for special education. We don't know. And I believe it was Ms. Tracy just threw out a random $300,000 amount.
Ms. Bricky.
Ms. Bricky, yes. Sorry, I couldn't see the last name. I'm going to see the first. It was a random $300,000 just thrown out into the ether. No story, no reason why, no how many special education kids we have coming in this year, how many are leaving, what those services are going to provide. And again, they took $500,000 out at this year now, but are only replacing $300,000. Again, no rhyme or reason, no story, no nothing. I stood up at that meeting after they had decided to do that, and I asked that question. Why was $300,000 just randomly thrown out there with no data to back it? And just like I'm happening now, I was stone-faced. Nobody had an answer for me, and I had to sit back down. With that, I'd like to offer an amendment to Article 7. Do you want to read the amendment?
Yeah, it's open to
See
amendment.
if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $175,000 to be added to the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund previously established for the purpose of supporting student services, with said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2025. No additional amount to be raised from taxation.
Okay, so the sum total of your amendment simply changes the dollar figure from $300,000 to $175,000.
Yes, sir.
Is there a second to that motion? It's been seconded by Louise Andrus. The pending motion now is the amendment of Article 7, and I will open up to comment on the pending motion. Ms. Andrus, would you like to speak to that, to the pending motion, or the subject matter of Article 7?
Okay, for the fiscal year ending July 31st, 2024, what was the total amount spent on special education?
Julie? Go ahead. Speak into the mic.
So I guess I may need a minute to find the total for that. Are you asking in district, out of district, everything combined?
Yeah, everything.
Okay. I'll need a minute.
Okay. I'll recognize the next speaker while we're waiting for an answer to that question, Louise.
Okay, I have one more question. Maybe I can ask
ahead.
that while she's looking. My question is, after the money was taken out of the expendable trust fund in October, what was the balance of the trust fund after that?
0.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll come back to an answer. Oh, do we have Jessica?
I actually kind of just want to address the previous speaker a little bit. Maybe some historical data might be helpful. So just so folks understand, at our board meetings, we're actually not supposed to be having a back and forth with the public. Public comment is public comment only. It's not public debate. So if you ask a question, we're not supposed to get into a back and forth. So that's why, that happened. Secondly, the $300,000 number, I respect that it was a little confusing at first, but historically in the past, as in my experience being here, we tended to put about $300,000 into the maintenance expendable trust to build it up over time. So at least in my perspective, that was the number that we tended to do. So I'm hoping that clarified a little bit, but there you go.
All right. Ms. Laughlin.
No, I think she's ready.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Julie. Mic's not working. Take Tracy's. Tracy?
So, Ms. Andrus, I'm going to have to get back to you on that because that's going to require that I go back through every single line from last year's budget and add that all together. And I don't have that tonight. Yes, you're welcome.
I'll recognize the next speaker.
Lisa Laughlin from Loudon. People are screaming about fiscal responsibility. And to Jess's point about the 300,000 number, that's typically what I have seen gone in from year to year. So what they're trying to do is build up a savings account. And I have multiple, and I have them across multiple banks. I am in favor of the board building a savings account so that when things happen, as they do, and as far as not being able to know, special ed students move in and out of the district quite liberally, and I'm not sure everybody recognizes that. I've been here for 20 years, but that's not always the case, and some people's situations are unstable. So a child with special ed needs might literally be in MV today, Concord tomorrow, Manchester next month. It's the nature of the unfortunate housing situation that we're in and people's life circumstances. It's not predictable. So the board, in my opinion, is making an effort to make it as predictable as possible, or at least as safe for us as possible. Mistakes were made, I acknowledge that, but we're trying to move forward.
I'll recognize Mr. Hines.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm going to key in on something that you said, Randy. These articles are frankly, I think, meaningless, but I want to key in on something that you said. And so my thinking was I was just going to have my peers just vote this up and get on with our night because there's no money to fund these. So do you really think, Randy, because you suggested a minute ago, that there is going to be some kind of a fund balance this year?
I believe that my comment was I don't think that there's going to be money to fund these. When I was even talking about retained surplus, there has been over the past few years, though, the call for consistency in putting these articles on. And you know, if we end up with 300,000 as a fund balance this year, I'd love to see it go into the Special Ed Expendable Trust.
Okay. Well, if you think there's a chance that there could be 300, then I guess I oppose these.
Even if there's 100, I think it would be good because it's up to, obviously.
So let me I'm going to recite a few numbers for the folks in the room to understand what I know. We started the year $1,014,000 in the hole. That's what we started the year with. I just looked at the financials that you published sometime today, I think. And we're $1.9 million over. We have overages in our some budget line items, just the overage ones, of 1.9. And I think I saw 2.6 left to get us through the rest of the year. Now that's after encumbrances and whatnot. And it didn't go down a lot from last month to this month, less than $500,000, but that's what we got to get through the rest of the year, 2.6. So I kind of feel like we're not going to, we shouldn't, it doesn't feel like we should get there, but if we do get there, then these, some of this may get funded. But my initial thinking was these are not going to be funded because there's going to be no fund balance this year. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay. We have 8 people who'd like to speak to this article, and I'm going to invite those who have yet to speak for a first time this evening to move to the front of the line. Everyone will have an opportunity to say their piece, but I'll give those the next 3 individuals in next 3 individuals in line an opportunity to go first. Yes, sir.
My name is Brennan Bork. I'm from Pennacook. I was a student here at MV, and I remember going into, I'm going to tell you guys a quick story, and I'm going to mention why I think we need funding for special education. I had a speech impediment growing up. It's not just kids with physical disabilities, it's kids with
other disabilities. It's normal-looking kids who get special education funding. It's not just the special kids that you're thinking about. We need this funding. We need $300,000 of funding. I know that the amount changed, so you need to vote no on the $179,000
175.
$175,000 funding, so we can reinstate the $300,000 funding. We need to fund this special education because it's what this program, our program at MV is probably one of the best in the States. And this program helps kids go to find jobs, go to Market Basket and get checkout jobs. We need this program and we need funding. I just don't know what is wrong with anyone in this school district to think that cutting special education funding is acceptable. Like what?
Okay. Yep. Nothing's wrong with anyone in the room.
Just, okay.
Nothing's wrong with anyone in the room. Next speaker.
Jen Beaudoin, Pennacook. I strongly disagree with this amendment. If the amount of $300,000 is no impact to taxpayers, then I don't see the point of lowering it.
Speak loudly, ma'am.
Sorry.
Yep, that's okay.
If $300,000 is no impact to taxpayers, then why should we lower it to less? One thing I think I've heard a lot the last 2 days about transparency, and I've heard several folks speak about how if there's money left over, it will offset the budget for the following year. I think for the folks that are talking about transparency, it may be useful in the future to say, we had this amount, and without it, the budget would have been this, but because we returned it, the budget is now lower. I think that might just help people who aren't understanding that math. And I also think based on the paperwork, it would be helpful to see some examples of the amounts per town based on house value. So say if you have a house that's valued at $200,000 and you are in Pennacook and the tax rate is $19 or something, that would be approximately $300 or whatever it is for that. So I think some of those examples may make things a little bit more clear. So I'm against this amendment. I'm for the original. Thank you.
Okay. The gentleman with the hat. Sorry, I don't know everybody's name.
You won't forget it. L.G. Goodwin, Loudon, New Hampshire. I just would like some clarification. You just created that you can take 5% of the unassigned fund balance. So is this getting funded before or after?
Randy? Or Mr. Shaughnessy?
So the two expendable trusts that we have, the special ed expendable trust and the maintenance expendable trust.
Same question for both.
Let's say that they're 300, those get funded first, and then what's left, the board could consider taking, some of that's left up to the 5% of the district assessment from the previous article that was passed.
Okay. So for somebody to say that there's no cost to the district to do this, there is, because supposedly you've said that any of the unassigned funds you're giving back by reducing what you're asking for, because there isn't a line that says in the unreserved fund there was $1 million, so the $3 million that you're asking for, we can take $1 million off of that because that's over there.
So it's not that there's no cost, it's there's no additional money to be raised by taxes. So it comes out of that unassigned fund balance. And that can only be approved at one of these meetings. So if there's money left, to Bill's point before, if there's money left, that would be put into that fund, which is essentially the savings account, in this case, for special ed. The other one is for the maintenance expendable trust. So it's going to be this same discussion potentially for that article.
Right.
But only if there's money available in the unassigned fund balance.
Just trying to make the realization that you put this in all these pockets, you have spent it, it is money that was there.
but then it's not going to be there, and you're going to ask for more for the other stuff.
But it is there, it's just in a savings account.
Right.
All right. Mr. Leonard, I think you have not spoken for a first time. Am I correct?
I feel privileged. So, Mr. Leonard, Jeff Leonard, local plumber, Loudon. How much was in them expendable trust funds, both the expendable trust funds before they went to a zero balance? An approximate would be good too. Just
Okay, I believe, and Kathleen, you can help me out potentially, as far as money that came out of the Special Ed Expendable Trust would be somewhere, somewhere north of 500,000.
Okay.
Came out of that special ed to bring it down to zero. It's right in that 500,000 range.
that's fine. And where did the other maintenance expendable trust fund that went down to zero too?
No, that one has $716,691 in it currently.
How much did you take money out of that to help pay?
Yes, that was for the overages in.
How much did you take out of that?
Yep, that was. Let me see if that's on here.
Well, if it was 2 million, so it was probably 1.5. If the two funds, no. I was just using Miss Berkey's math.
I can still go back and change a grade.
Don't tell my parents.
$572,634.
Okay. Where did the other million come from to pay off the $2 million?
That's what we're trying to absorb in this year. So we started this year with a negative fund balance, and our goal is to absorb it in this year so it has no future impact.
And then where will that money come from, though?
Well, we froze the budget. We've been tightening things down to try to absorb it in this year's operating budget.
Okay. All right.
So it potentially could have been an unassigned fund balance at the end of the year. But again, we've had the budget frozen since October in the hopes of, it wasn't really because of that, because at the time we didn't know about that million, but when we froze the budget looking at some other things that were concerning as far as some overages. But by doing so, and freezing things that early on, gave us a better chance to absorb that million.
Okay. And printing in the book that has no tax impact, we have a problem with even in the local town. It all impacts our taxes at some point. So saying it's no tax impact, we've already paid the tax on it. If it's going to be a profit at the end of not a profit, a surplus. Thank you.
I'm going to recognize Mr. Shaughnessy to speak to that.
Yeah, I just want to address. Yeah, there's.
Can I hold on?
Yep. Yeah, okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Not to be rude. Who are you?
I'm Jim O'Shaughnessy. I'm an attorney. I live in Concord. I represent school districts. I work at
He's the district's legal counsel.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just want to help the folks understand why that phrase, no additional amount to be raised from taxation, is in that article. First of all, it's recommended language from the DRA, the Division of Revenue Administration.
Thank you.
The reason it is there is because it is telling you the source of the funds. The source of the funds is unassigned fund balance, and it's saying that no additional amounts will be raised through taxation. It's all being raised through fund balance. It is misleading to a lot of folks because they're looking at it and saying, but it does have a tax impact. It does have a tax impact. It's just the source is not new taxes, it's fund balance.
So basically what is called is smoke and mirrors.
Well, it's like, so sometimes folks will say no additional amount to be raised through taxation. There's different ways to tweak it, but this is DRA's language, and that's why it's there.
Department of Revenue Administration.
Okay.
DRA.
Thank you.
Okay. We have 5 individuals. Apologize, I'm not exactly sure who was in line first, but I'll recognize this gentleman because he's been assertive in taking his place at the mic.
I yielded my position to individuals who had not had an opportunity to speak yet.
I think everyone in line here has spoken at least once this evening. Am I correct? Okay.
Yeah, we all have.
Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I'm looking at a special education budget increase for fiscal year 25-26, and it's approximately $1.15 million increase. How many students in the Merrimack Valley District are special needs, special education? What percentage, roughly? I don't- it doesn't
Our
have to be exact.
percentage is just a little bit over 29% of our student population,
Little over,
a little
so
bit
about
over
30%?
600.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak over, about 29 to 30%?
Yes.
Okay. So, first of all, I'm going to support the first gentleman whose name I've forgotten, amendment to the 175,000. Second of all, if we have a 20 or 30% special needs, why would that be such a huge chunk of this budget compared to the rest of the students? And before people in the room, no offense to you folks, say, well, you don't know what it's like to be special needs. Yes, I do. I grew up as dyslexic as the day is long. I can read upside down and backwards as fast as you can put it in front of me without any trouble at all. Transposing letters and numbers in my grade school days was horrendous, but I had teachers who helped me get over that. So I understand what it's like. So if you have that 30%, why is it that we're running such a high number here to care for them? Is the cost overall that high for the people who are going to help someone, for example, lose a speech impediment, or who has what's colloquially classified now as autism?
The cost for students who are in district, so special education requires, the laws require that we look at a continuum of placements, meaning that we look at first educating a student with an educational disability with their same age peers in the public setting. And so we always start there. And then what we need to do is add supports and services as needed for them to be successful and for them to receive what is called a free and appropriate public education. So for a student who's in one of our schools, that may look like an additional cost for a speech and language pathologist, as you pointed out. It could be occupational therapy, physical therapy, a variety of what we call related services. I would like to point out those related services are things that we're able to bill for through the Medicaid to Schools program, where we actually get some money back for that. So that offsets some of that cost. The big number that we talked about, I believe, last night is the out of district. So 1%, around 1% of our identified population of children with disabilities have moved along that continuum. They've, so we try some supports and services. They require more. We kind of move along to more specialized programming, which we're very lucky to have some of those right in district. And so it's called least restrictive. So we go with the least support to adding as much as we need to, and that can go all the way to a residential placement. And day programs. Those day programs, the cost for those day programs has increased tremendously over the past several years. We did a little analysis. One student over the past 4 years, that placement has increased $100,000. Our transportation
Per student?
costs, yes, for an out-of-district placement. And mind you, these are placements that are decided by teams that include the families. So we aren't saying this child has to go to this placement. We work together to make a decision, but we exhaust all of the options to get to that point. The transportation costs, so part of that free and appropriate public education means that also that transportation is part of it. So that's a huge number. Somebody referenced last night that I had mentioned at the budget hearing that one student had the cost of $83,000. That is what we are being faced with. We are getting bids for routes that are $400 a day, $500 a day. And that's why we're working on some of those solutions, because we see that's what all the districts in the area are seeing, in our state are seeing. It's a
All right.
Further question?
I have the question, next question that I would have is, I think it was asked before, but I'm not sure. Do we have a ballpark idea of what the current balance is in this that you want to appropriate another $300,000 to?
$0 in the special ed trust fund.
Okay. All right, thank you. I won't take up any more of your time again. I'm going to support the amendment at $175,000. Thank you.
So the pending motion is the adoption of the amendment to Article 7, reducing the dollar amount to $175,000. Yes, sir.
Jesse Schmidt, Pennacook. That better? Perfect. So I'm going to get to a question in this, just so that it doesn't come to anything else, but a small preamble to this. It's frankly disheartening how this board acts in many of our forums throughout the school year as we do school board meetings. So a comment that has come out tonight is how the school board meetings do allow for some public comment, and I understand not wanting to have a back and forth in terms of bogging down the process. However, when there is a absolutely, I'm going to go with the disgusting lack of transparency, I don't understand how, even with an amendment of $175,000, how we can trust that that's going to be used wisely or appropriately. So that is my question is, why do we not have more commentary? Why do we not allow for more other than tonight? One day a year. Otherwise, we do not get ability to be heard. And it consistently feels like any public comment given at a school board meeting went for an entire year with emails going unanswered, with no one answering to any of the public's actual concerns, to consistently hearing, I don't have that in front of me, I don't have the numbers, we'll have to get back to you, and no one gets back to us. So why would we trust you guys to make that decision and actually weigh in on the public's opinion? It is our tax dollars. As Jeff pointed out, those taxes have already been taken. So it's not just out of nowhere. We already have paid for it. And yet we get zero input, or at least seemingly. So why would we trust the board to do this?
Are you looking for a response?
I would love a response. I understand that I'm very unlikely
I
to
only
get one.
ask that because it's not directly pertinent to the subject matter of the article. It is an important question.
I will pass the time then.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
My suggestion would be, if anyone in the audience has similar questions or comments, save it for Article 10, when any other business may legally come before the meeting. It's an important question. I don't want you to interpret my comment as dismissive of the question. I'm simply trying to keep the debate focused on the pending motion. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Brian Leslie from Salisbury. I was going to ask about the $300,000 and how the number came to be, but that was already clarified. Am I able to ask how the $175,000 arrived on the amendment?
Well, it was made by a gentleman on the floor. I'm not sure that any member of the board can respond to the question. I suppose, no, I'm not gonna ask the gentleman unless he chooses to come to, he's in the back of the line there. So perhaps if you'll keep that question in mind, and when it's your turn to speak, you can speak to it.
We'll just leave it as an open question. Thank you.
Okay. All right. This gentleman has yet to speak this evening. Go ahead.
Hello, Ryan Gunn, Boscoin. I just want to clarify, if we amend down to 175,
because we already passed Article 6, if by some miracle we have $300,000 of surplus, it would just shift that extra 125 from special ed to the contingency fund that we just passed. That's correct?
The next thing, depending on how the next article goes, the maintenance expendable trust, if there was, say, 300, then 175 would go into the special ed, and then the rest would go into the maintenance expendable trust. What would left would then be up potentially for the board to consider from the contingency fund.
So the only way anything would ever go back to taxes is if somehow we hit over the 5%, 1.6 million, plus the 175, plus the 300,000.
Whatever is left would offset it that year, and then the contingency fund would offset the taxes for the following year.
Okay, so all of this is pretty unlikely, it seems like. Thank you.
This year,
Okay, let's keep moving. Try to add new information to the debate if you can.
Sure. This is Adam Russell. I'm from Pennacook. Hello. Nice to see you all again. We've heard that the 500,000, was it, that got pulled from the special ed fund previously. Can Randy or anyone up there, can you comment on the reason that that was pulled and what it was used for? I'll get there.
It was used to cover overages from the 23-24 school year in special ed. These funds can only be used for what that particular fund is for. It can't be taken out for anything else. So things that are put into the special ed expendable trust can only be used for special ed costs.
So if we had run into that situation and we didn't have $500,000 in that trust fund, we would have reasonably been expecting to see a line item in the budget from this meeting, or last night's meeting rather, to appropriate that further on top of everything else to cover that overage?
We would have been trying to absorb $1.5 million in this year's budget instead of the $1 million that we're trying to absorb.
Yep. So I am not in favor of this amendment. I think the 175 is too low, given that we have had overages, that special ed is increasingly expensive and is not likely to get cheaper anytime soon, like so much else in our world. I believe that we should be voting down this amendment. I honestly think that 300,000 is too low, but given the lack of expectation that we are going to have that much in unassigned funds at the end of the school year, that we should be giving ourselves as much room as possible to build as much cushion in this area as we can, so that we're not biting ourselves in our own behinds come next year. Thank you.
Okay. And perhaps you can respond to the earlier gentleman's question. Thank you.
Sean Kitson, Loudon. So to clarify on this amendment, it does not take away any funding from special education. Not a dime. Does not take away a dime from special education. It only makes this board more accountable financially. It holds them to a T to say, we need to fiscally do a forensic audit on our spending and make sure that we are staying within our budget lines, so that they don't just know, oh, well, we have 300,000, we have 500,000, we have $1 million in an expendable trust that if we blow our budget, we've got it there. That's what this amendment does. How I came to that was the draft amendment to this was 150. The draft presented by them, originally I think it was at the one of the board meetings, was 150,000. So I'm trying to negotiate in good faith. It's only a 40% cut. They're still getting 60% of that money. And again, it just keeps them accountable so that they don't lose another $2 million on us. That's all it's trying to do. It does not cut any appropriations from special education.
Mr. Hemingway, you've been waiting a while to. Oh. Okay. And you just spoke, Mr. Leonard, or perhaps the final speaker on the amendment.
Yes, well, I want to know, Mr. Wormold said that the expendable trust funds have to be spent specifically for what they're assigned for. Am I correct? Then how can we spend $500,000 out of the maintenance expendable trust fund for special education?
It wasn't for special education, it was for overages in the building and grounds and maintenance.
That was part of the $2 million?
Correct. Yep.
Oh.
There were over expenditures in 2 categories.
Oh,
and
okay,
it went-
I thought it was all for,
No.
okay, so 2. How were these funds supported before? How did this money get into these funds before?
Because of votes at meetings like this, as Lisa had suggested, that it was typically $300,000, but the special ed expendable trust had actually been not, and I don't know, don't quote me on how many years, but I don't recall money going into the special ed expendable trust over the last 5 years or so. And really, you know, as we reflect on being fiscally responsible, we should have been putting in money into these funds every year a little bit, you know, to speak to what we've heard in previous years. And I wish we had been doing that in both of these funds, because they're just there and can be used just like when we talk about the maintenance expendable trust for those large capital projects like the roof on this building. That's going to be a big cost, and instead of trying to add that to the budget, we can build that up so that we can get to the point of being able to do that. And I think we should have been doing both of these, you know, as part of that financial well-being.
I agree. Towns are the same way. So I support the amendment because, as Mr. Wormold said, we should be putting at least a little bit of money away. And I think $175,000 is a little bit of money. So I support the article.
Okay, the pending motion is the adoption of the amendment to Article 7. The effect of the amendment is simply to reduce the dollar amount from $300,000 to $175,000. Further comment or question?
It's motion for a secret ballot.
Okay.
This is the
A request has been made for a secret ballot. Do you have 5 names of individuals present in the room?
I do, yes, sir.
Can you present them to me in writing?
Yes, sir.
Will the following individuals please stand? Jennifer Mercer, Karen Burke-Troon, Amy Griffin, Rosemary Goodwin, Amy Corliss. All right, it has been the requisite 5 voters are present in the room.
Point of order?
Point of order?
Over here? It's me.
Where are you?
It's Jess over here. Hey,
Oh, okay.
How you doing?
Oh.
Can you clarify if I ask for a majority vote for us to overrule that ruling, would we not have to do a secret ballot and could just switch like a card count? In my understanding, that's
It's not a decision of the moderator.
Okay.
It's state
Thank you.
law to request a secret ballot. There were 5 people who made the request. They're present. I will recognize it. It's not an arbitrary or discretionary decision of the moderator.
Understood. Thank you.
All right, we'll proceed to a secret ballot on the amendment to Article 7. If you vote yes, you are in favor of the amendment to Article 7, which reduces the dollar amount to $175,000. If you vote no, you are opposed to that amendment. Point of order?
Yes, it is, Charlie. Could you do, when you do 1 and then you do 2, could you separate, because when the second people are coming out, we're in the way. So if you do 1, 3, or 2, 5.
Really, Bill?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
All right. In deference to Mr. Hines, we will proceed in the following order. We will start with Group 1 and the head table We will proceed to group 4. We'll proceed to group 2. We'll proceed to group 5, and the last group to vote will be group 4, starting with group 1. Oh, is it? And folks, make sure you get your card marked as you pass through the line. Folks, if you do not have your card, you cannot vote. And please form 3 lines entering the voting area. Okay. Has everyone voted on the amendment to Article 7 who intends to? If so, I would ask everyone to return to their seats. Assistant Moderator Phillips, has everyone voted who intends to? Okay. Rodney Phillips will remove the ballots from the box. He will show the box, the empty box, to everyone in the room, and our crew of counters will proceed to count the votes on the amendment to Article 7. And since we have no other pending questions or action or to take up in the, can everyone see the empty ballot box? Okay. Thank you. Just hang tight and visit with your neighbor for a little bit. Won't take long. Folks, please take your seats. I have the results of the ballot vote on the amendment to Article 7. A total of 330 ballots were cast, 152 in the affirmative and 178 in the negative, and the motion to amend Article 7 is defeated. Article 7 is now, the pending motion now is the adoption of Article 7 as introduced, and it's open to further discussion and amendment. And I'll recognize, I'll recognize Mr. Russell and then Mr. Hemingway to speak to the pending motion, which is the adoption of Article 7.
I will be very brief. I'm Adam Russell from Pennacook. You should know my face by now. I would like to move the question.
Motion has been made to move the question. Is there a second to the motion? Okay, it's been seconded by any number of people. I will recognize that motion. I will allow Mr. Hemingway to speak. I'm not going to recognize any amendments at this point, given that the motion to move the question is pending.
Yes.
But Mr. Hemingway, you may proceed.
I was going to state something and then also propose an amendment. However, I will simply state it in a way that should make some sense here. There are ways to fund warrant articles outside of unassigned fund balances. And those make a lot of sense if you're trying to be fiscally responsible and make sure that your funds actually have funds in them when you need to use them. As for the unreserved fund balance, you can see on page 11 of your of the revenues page here for the annual report. The top line says unreserved fund balance. That is showing that there is nothing coming out of that to go towards the offset of taxes in this budget as a revenue. In previous years, there were numbers there, but because we are negative, there's nothing. There's nothing to fund any of these warrant articles as currently described either. And so I would suggest that you consider that in the future. Since I cannot make an amendment, that will be all for now. Thank you.
Okay. The motion to move the question is the pending motion. If you're in favor of that motion, you're in favor of ending debate on the adoption of Article 7 as introduced. If you're opposed to that motion, you favor continuing debate on the adoption of Article 7 as introduced. Are you ready for the question? Yes. All in favor of moving the question, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And we now move to the adoption of Article 7 as introduced. Are you ready for the question? If you're in favor of Article 7, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. In the judgment of the moderator, the ayes have it, and Article 7 is adopted.
Point of order, I'd like to make a motion to
I have a
restrict
request for a
consideration.
show of cards.
Oh,
I will recognize that request. And pursuant to whoever made the comment earlier about Mr. LaLiberty, who made the comment earlier about counting all sections all at once, I'll ask my 5 counters to come forward. I will request, is there a point of order? No? Okay. Are our counters in place? If you're in favor of the adoption of Article 7, please raise your card. Just hold on to the number. All set? Have all 5 counters completed counting? Okay, Group 1. 65 in the affirmative, Group 2. 55 in the affirmative, Group 3. 35. Group 4. 24. Group 5. 9. Okay, if you are opposed to the adoption of Article 7, please raise your cards. Okay. Group 1, Andrew. 20 in the negative. Group 2. 5 in the negative. Group 3. 13 in the negative. Group 4. 37 in the negative. 37. Group 5. 60 in the negative. Okay, a total of 323 cards were shown, 188 in the affirmative and 135 in the negative, and Article 7 is adopted. Article 8.
Point of order.
Uh,
Julie Nudd Webster, I'd like to restrict reconsideration.
A motion has been made to restrict reconsideration. It's been multiply seconded. If you're in favor of restricting reconsideration, there can be no further action on the affirmative vote on the adoption of Article 7. If you're opposed, it's potentially open to further action this evening. Are you ready for the question? All in favor of restricting reconsideration, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? The ayes have it. We move to Article 8. Article 8, to see if the school district, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. No, that's right, that's right. Article 8, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $300,000 to be added to the Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund previously established for the purposes of maintaining school buildings and grounds, with said funds to come from unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1, 2025. No additional amount to be raised from taxation. The school board recommends this article. Is there a motion on Article 8?
So moved.
It's been moved. It's been moved. I thought Melissa was speaking to this one.
I am.
Okay.
But I also.
Sorry. Is there a second to the motion? Okay. It's been seconded, and I will now recognize Melissa Muzzy to speak to Article 8.
Thank you. So in Article 8, in 1993, MV, our Merrimack Valley School District voters, approved the establishment of funding a Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund, or MET. The expressed purpose of this fund is repairing and maintaining the school district's buildings and grounds. The district has worked hard to craft a proactive capital improvement plan, CIP, and this CIP is a valuable communication planning tool that helps the district protect the investment represented by our buildings and grounds, an insured value over $90 million. Feedback from the community indicates that rather than bringing larger capital expenses and projects to the voters through separate articles on a warrant, the district should save in anticipation of these future expenses. With that in mind, we are asking to reserve $300,000 from the end of year unassigned fund balance to be placed in the district's Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund. This money will be utilized to support the Merrimack Valley School District's capital improvement plan as we prepare to address expected infrastructure and building needs throughout the district. Money can only be added to the Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund through the voter approval at this annual meeting. Money can be withdrawn from the
from this fund only after a public hearing. At the public hearing, the board will provide information as to why the money from the fund is being withdrawn. For example, to replace a roof on one of the schools. The board will listen to feedback from the attendees at that meeting, and then at the board meeting, the board will vote to take action. I now open the floor to feedback on Article 6.
Okay, I'll recognize you to speak to Article 8.
Hi, this is Jen from Pennacook. I'd like to move to restrict consideration of this article.
Can't do it, we haven't voted on it yet. No, you can't. We actually have to make a decision on the article before anyone can move to restrict reconsideration of it.
It seems like that was different last night.
No.
Okay.
No. Yes, sir.
Sean Kitson, Loudon. I think you already mentioned this, but I can't remember the figure. How much is in the expendable trust fund for the maintenance?
$716,691.48.
Okay. So there is money in there to be spent in case of emergencies or in case of contingencies or anything like that, should that arise?
Yes, and actually with our new focus, and there's something in the packet about the new approach to the MET, using it for the larger capital improvement projects and funding the smaller capital improvement projects within the budget lines. And right now, one of the examples that we gave was the high school roof, which is going to be between $1.5 and $1.8 million.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to offer an amendment.
I'll recognize that.
To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $175,000 to be added to the Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund previously established for the purpose of maintaining school buildings and grounds, with said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance available for transfer July 1st, 2025. No additional amount to be raised from taxation.
I'm sorry, what was the dollar amount?
$175,000.
$175,000. Okay. Motion has been made to amend Article 8 to reduce the dollar amount. No other changes to the wording of the article. Oh, no additional amount. My apologies. We'll read the amended article when we come to a vote on it. So the pending motion, was there a second to the motion? It's been multiply seconded. And I will now invite comment on the pending motion, which is the amendment to Article 8. Yes.
Okay, my name is Alyssa Lehar from Loudon. I just want to point out that this article and the amended article is very similar to the amendment we had before, and the article is very similar. So in order to get us out earlier, let's just think that we're probably going to vote the same way. Our opinions are probably pretty well formed, and let's move this along. So my presenters behind me that I'm not talking to, I'm talking to you, moderator. Let's make our points concise and vote the way you feel.
All right.
Okay, bye.
I'm all for concise comments. I will recognize everyone who's standing in line.
I was just going to officially say let's move the question. It's the same question as the last time.
Okay, a motion has been made to move the question. Is there a second to the motion? It has been seconded. I will allow everyone who is standing in line, including those who've spoken multiple times this evening, to make comments before we vote on the motion to move the question. Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm Steve Daldeo from Loudon, and my question is, and I understand that this fund is dedicated solely for the purposes of building and ground maintenance, but does it include, or could it include, function 4200 and function 4600? 4200 is site improvement, and 4600 is building improvement. And if it does include building improvement, where is the cutoff point between a small capital project and a big capital project? In my mind, the new roof would be a major or big or large capital improvement project.
So the smaller projects would be things that could fit in the existing budget line, and the major ones. So instead of having an up and down with the budget, throwing in $1 million project one year and then not having it there the next, this maintenance expendable trust will serve to be that account that we build up for those major capital projects. Anything that fits in the existing lines would be considered, and that's the work that Fred does on the CIP. He does that for 10 years now, and he's constantly moving that and trying to get things to fit and looking at when he can put things in. He's really a master at putting those all together, and has a nice prioritized list for next year, fitting those within the budget.
Great, thank you. And one more quick question, if I may. And what is the basis for the 30,000 of the 300,000?
Jessica?
So sorry, I feel like a ding. Fred, if you want to
Okay, Fred?
And it's kind of like the same thing with the special ed. We've been asked continuously over the last few years to, instead of asking for 300,000 one year and 100,000
Speak into the mic.
next year,
Thank you, Fred.
to make it consistent. And we think 300,000 is consistent and hopefully within what people will pay and, more importantly, what they will support. So that's why we try to keep it at 300,000.
Great, thank you, Fred.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Andrus?
Louise Andrus from Salisbury. I have a few things to say, and most of you aren't going to be very happy with me.
Keep it brief.
But last fall, I started asking questions because we knew the business administrator had resigned. We knew that all this money had been taken out of 2 trust funds, but nobody really had any answers, so I started digging. I'm in favor of only $175,000 to be added to the trust fund because each and every one of you up there have got to earn our trust. When I started digging, I found out that in July and August, $500,000 had been spent on the track. Now, I realized the track needed to be done. That's not the issue. It's how it was done. I don't understand who in the Merrimack Valley School District or SAU manages our money. I really, really don't. This $500,000, this is what I found wrong.
Can you keep your comments focused on the subject matter of Article 8?
I am leaving it on the article. I don't believe that we should put more than $175,000 in the trust fund, and I'm giving you the reason why.
Proceed.
So can I speak or not?
Yes.
So when I started digging, I found out on this track there was no RFP. Now, there is a policy that anything, unless it's been changed, anything over $50,000 needs an RFP.
Point of order. Okay. Now, please be quiet. No back and forth between the audience members. Mr. Hemingway, or would you like to speak to the question?
Answer that question from Louise.
Yes, you may.
I manage the money in the maintenance department. I made the decision not to put out an RFP. There aren't a lot of companies out there that do track and tennis court surfaces. I contacted or tried to contact the company that originally put the track in and originally in 2005 redid it. They did not return my phone calls. GMI, a local company who had done paving for the school district before, Webster, Salisbury, the fire barn, the bus compound, was doing a project a co-project with Merrimack Valley and the city of Concord on the New Island and Allen Street, right out here in front of the high school. Someone in the engineering department for the city of Concord contacted me and asked me if I was going to do any Safe Routes to School work this summer. I had $40,000 in the CIP for that, but I was going to do either the front or back access road, putting a sidewalk in. And Safe Routes to School is a federally funded grant program, which we had won a grant, and we did a travel plan, which tells the federal government what we want to do. We completed that in 2014. It was a total of $1.4 million. Well, we don't have $1.4 million, so I started doing piecework. We put the sidewalk on Beatty Drive, and then we put this new island in out here. I put 60,000, not 40, I'm sorry. The city of Concord put 40, and she said she wanted to do that, spend that money on Allen Street. So that's what we did. Because of my relationship with GMI and because of their superior work, I asked Warren Colby, the owner, if they did tracks. They did. They sent down their superintendent for this type of project, Ron Davenport. We then had a meeting with Maine Track and Tennis, who they use for tracks and tennis courts. They gave me a price. The other company still didn't get back to me, so I went with GMI. Louise, where are you? Oh. Louise is absolutely right. There is a policy. Anything over $50,000 will be publicly bid, and that's where Louise is saying RFP. In this case, Merrimack Valley would put an RFP out, invite people to bid on it, and then not necessarily the lowest bid, the bid that would be in the best interest of, in this case, Merrimack Valley School District. I did not put it out to bid. I feel we got an excellent product at an excellent price. And I'll add one more thing to that. The whole idea of this track, what they were going to do was first take off what was then orange, the track surface itself, with the rubber particles in it. Then they were going to grind down 1.5 inches of the pavement. Next, they were going to add 2 inches of pavement back onto the track and get the grade level and everything for drainage. I was on my way back from Webster that summer day. Ron Davenport, whatever his last name was, I can't remember, called me and said, "Are you around?" And I said, "I'm on my way back from Webster," and he says, "We have a problem, stop over the track." I get out of my truck, I start walking on the track, which they've already started grinding down, and I'm thinking, boy, this is soft. The old track from 2005 was underneath, which in hindsight was pretty interesting because the company that did it was the same company that wasn't returning my calls. Also in hindsight, I think I made the right decision. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I made a decision in the best interest of the taxpayers, in my opinion, which I've been doing for 30 years. That is what Louise was talking about as far as the track and not me not putting out an RFP. I take responsibility for it. I made the decision. Next question.
Okay, thank you, Fred. All right, let's keep comments brief and focused on the subject matter of Article 8. Mr. Hemingway.
And I believe yes. So I want to point out that one of the things that has been broadly talked about is, of course, transparency and trust. I can understand when people haven't seen contracts or don't get responses that they feel that way. However, there's one person that I definitely trust up here, and he shows us exactly what his plan is for the next 10 years in the CIP plan, and that's Fred.
That stands for Capital Improvement Plan.
Yes, thank you. Now, to point out, looking at the maintenance capital improvement plan, there's a lot there. If we take it at full value of what the maintenance fund needs to support, we're in huge trouble. there's a little over $13 million listed in here for the next 10 years. Let that sink in for a second. That would be more than $1 million put into the fund each year if it needed to be the sole source for all of those items. Fortunately, many of these projects are likely to be taken care of within the normal operating budget now, or what had been proposed as the operating budget, thanks to the improvement area increases put in specifically for that reason and the new approach to the MVSD Maintenance Expendable Trust and CIP document that is also included in your annual report. There are two common ways to look at setting an appropriate value to go into the fund. One of which is to suggest that anything under a given amount is an individual project and somehow will simply be handled on its own. And the other is to say that only what is above the operating budget total, which prior to amending it lower, was for $631,345 each year for all improvements.
Wrap it up, David.
Yet now it's obviously been lowered. Using that the later system there, we run into an issue quickly in the 27-28 budget cycle, where over $3 million more is needed that would need to come out of this fund. Even if we pretend that the largest single project in that year is the only one, the high school roof, $1.8 million is still needed. Now, I'm sure budget line items can be shifted a little, or at least they could have been. Maybe that's a little more challenging now. As some projects, though many already have been.
Yeah, your 3 minutes have come and gone, Dave.
Sorry.
Bring it to a close.
So that leaves an additional $1.2 million left for the fund, which over the next few years, that's $600,000 each year. That's far cry from the 175 proposed. Not only do we need the original amount, we need far more, and the proof is here.
Point of order?
So please vote against this amendment.
Come on, Dave. Mr. Russell, keep it brief. I'm good. Okay. Did you have any further comments? Okay. The pending motion is the motion to move the question. The question is the adoption of Article 8 as proposed for amendment.
Point of order, I'd like to call for a card vote.
Card vote has been requested. I'll recognize that. So we're moving the question on the adoption of the amendment to Article 8. Does everyone understand? If you're in favor of moving the question on the adoption of the amendment to Article 8, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Nay. The ayes have it. The pending motion now is the adoption of the amendment to Article 8, which reduces the dollar amount from $300,000 to $175,000. Are you ready for the question? If you're in favor of the amendment to Article 8, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Nay. Nays have it, and I'm sorry, somebody asked for a card vote. Sorry about that. Apologies. No, and I recognize that. I just forgot. So I'll ask my counters to come forward. It's pretty obvious from the voice vote what the result will be, but it was asked for. I will recognize it. And are my counters in place? They are. If you're in favor of the adoption of Article 8 as introduced, please say, I'm sorry, as amended, please say, please raise your card. Getting late. This is the adoption of the amendment to Article 8 that you're voting on. You're in favor, if you're raising your card now, you're in favor of reducing the dollar amount to $175,000. All set, Andrew? 12 in the affirmative. 5, Group 2. Lynn. 13, Group 3. Group 4. 31 in the affirmative, Group 4. Group 5. 51, Group 5 in the affirmative. If you're opposed to the amendment to Article 8, please raise your cards. All set? Go ahead. 70 in the negative in Group 1, Group 2. 55, Group 2, Lynn, Group 3. 32, Group 4. 24, Group 5. 7. Give me a sec. Okay, a total of 300 votes were taken, with 112 in the affirmative and 188 in the negative, and the motion to amend Article 8 is defeated. The pending motion now is the adoption of Article 8 as introduced, open to further discussion or amendment.
I'd like to move the question.
A motion has been made to move the question. Is there a second?
Many.
Plenty of seconds.
Point of order, I'd also like to call for a card vote on that one as well.
Card vote has been requested on the motion to move the question on the adoption of Article 8 as introduced. Sorry, counters. So if you're in favor of the motion to move the question, you are in favor of foreclosing on further discussion on the adoption of Article 8 as introduced. If you're in favor, please raise your cards. Okay, counters, please read me off the ayes, starting with Andrew, sorry. 73 in Group 1, 57 Group 2, 34 Group 3, 32 Group 4, 8 Group 5. If you're opposed to the motion to move the question, please raise your cards. Okay, Andrew. 7 in the negative in Group 1, 4 Group 2, 3 Group 3, 19 Group 4, 46 Group 5. Give me a sec. $283 cards were shown, 204 in the affirmative, 79 in the negative, and the motion to move the question is adopted. So we now move to the adoption of Article 8 as introduced. Are you ready for the question? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and Article 8 is adopted. Article 9, for what purpose?
Point of order, Dan Nudd, Webster. I'd like to restrict reconsideration.
Okay. Motion has been made by Dan Nudd to restrict reconsideration to the affirmative vote on Article 8. Is there a second to the motion? Lisa Laughlin has seconded the motion. Everyone understand what we're doing here at this point in the evening, in the second evening? If you are in favor of restricting reconsideration of the affirmative vote on the adoption of Article 8, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and further consideration of the adoption of Article 8 as introduced is restricted. We move now to Article 9, to transact any other business that may legally come before the meeting. And for those of you who are new to town meetings or school district meetings, basically anything and everything is on the table. Absolutely nothing that happens in this part of the agenda is binding in any way. So you can bring up anything that's pertinent to the subject matter of the meeting, but there can be straw votes, but they're completely non-binding. So I want to make clear to everyone, and nor can there be any consideration on Article 9 of anything last night or tonight where reconsideration was restricted. Proceed.
Dan Nudd, Webster. I have a request of the board. I don't go to many school board meetings, but I go to a few throughout the year. I heard Jessica say it. Very frustrating. We can have public comment before the school board meeting, and that's it. Sometimes we want answers. We want, maybe not a back and forth, we don't want an argument, but we get one time, once a year, this is it, and this is what we're talking about. This is why I think everybody's mad. If there's 5 people, 10 people, there's nobody there. We're in the library. If we're there and we have some questions, answer them. That's all we're asking. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher.
Ray Fisher, Boscawen. In the past, and I don't know how many years I've been going to a school meeting, but it's always been said, because of the participation from all the area towns, we can't have it on Thursday night anymore. We can't have it on Friday. We have to have it on Saturday. So I don't know what happened to all of that, but we had it on Thursday, and this place was mobbed. We had it on Friday, a continuance, and the place is almost mobbed tonight. So I don't know what the story was behind the other years, but I don't think it amounted to anything. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Thank you. Further question or comment under Article 9? Mr. Collins.
Yep. Dave Collins, Webster. Good evening. So everybody, it's been quite an interesting last 2 nights, hasn't it? 4.5 hours together last night, about 3 hours together tonight. Long meeting, longest one I can ever remember in this district, a long time. So, to the school board, I'll use some school analogies. Last year, I would rate the meeting as a C. A C because questions came up. We asked about transparency. I spoke about it at the end of the meeting, about being more transparent, about more visible to the voters about what's going on, because the average voters come once a year. They may go to some school board meetings. They may see stuff throughout the year. I live in Webster. There was no real communication model. I have to go out and search when I find it. So I find news from local people. Maybe I find online on social media, and then I go look for it, what's going on. I do not have children in the school district. So this year, overall, I rate it as a D, and I'll tell you why. This is what I felt the last about, 7 hours have been. It's like a poker game. It's like we get a little tidbit of information presented, and then we come up and ask pointed questions, and wow, they get the answers on it. Isn't that wonderful? And let's start at something which is a concept that a lot of people were confused over last night. You have a budget year. We're right in the middle of a budget year. For most towns, when we go to town meeting, their budget year ended on December 31st. So what we're talking about is kind of the current year, so we're already in the budget year. However, several years ago, you always used to present a proposal, So your budget year, your fiscal year is, I use 7/1 to 7/1, 6/30 to 6/30, whatever you want to call it, right? So we literally have several months left before we're over, right? Several years ago, we used to get a budget that would actually show us what you spent in total the prior fiscal year, which for us right now would have been 23-24. That was one column. Then we got anticipated for the current year, and then you got projected for the coming year. And you know what that did to me as a person who probably really spent most of my time looking about it a few days before school meeting? It allowed me to see where you were spending the money, how it went year over year, and where you're looking to go next year. So you stop doing that. So what happens is it leads to confusion amongst the voters, because what we keep talking about is we just spent a ton of time debating. So I'm going to waste a moment here. We spent a ton of time debating articles that we already told that there's no money there. There's no money to fund them. And to your credit, Superintendent, you did state, we're doing this to try to be consistent. Wonderful. Thank you very much. But there's no money there. So we spent all this time debating it. But again, it's a poker game. We got to ask information. So somebody brought up last night about, and again, I'm not looking to put anybody down here, so please understand that. All I'm saying is this. Last night, somebody spoke about what the district performance has been, right? So it's not a great number. And the assistant superintendent nicely said, well, that's a skewed number. That's a skewed number because it's skewed because of people don't participate. It skews the number. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's great to know. Wouldn't that be nice to know up front? When I look in your reports that you presented this year, it's a fluff report is what it is. Your reports are fluff reports. I'll be honest with you. As a taxpayer, I expect you to essentially work hard to do a good job for the kids, and I think you do. I don't think anybody, last night or tonight, as much as people have gotten upset, I don't think they feel that overall the board, the administration, the teachers really do a bad job, right? However, what I want to know is, I want to know basically about what the state education's talking about and that. That's what I want to know. Our numbers are down, but we're working hard to do it. This is what we're doing to improve it. That's what we're talking about in transparency. And then in transparency, I look in your report. It was kind of nice that I had last night, tonight to look at to think about it a little bit. So I look in your report and you give, on page 13, you talk about cost per state pupil average. Yeah, that's a wonderful number. Yeah, sorry, I've got the mic. So it's a wonderful number, right? I'm going to be quick. I just got 2 more points and I'll finish up. Cost per state pupil average, we're below that. I don't really care where other districts are. I care where we are year over year over year. And you know why I care? Because I went out to the State Department of Education's website, and I found that there are school districts that are cheaper than us. There are school districts that charge over $40,000 per pupil. Jackson, Newcastle, Pittsburgh, New Hampshire. That skews that number down. So again, great graphic, thanks very much, but really doesn't mean a lot. What you got to do is what the voters are concerned about and what the people, particularly my friends from Loudon, are very concerned about is, because you've been a vocal group, kudos to you, we're concerned about what we're spending year over year. You had some missteps in the last year. Mistakes were made. The problem with transparency and the thing you fail to do is step up and admit those and admit mistakes were made, or maybe the funding is made, however you want to present it, but you didn't present it. And when people asked you about that, why? You had issues with what you talked about. Fred, thank you for doing a nice job explaining that, right? That makes sense.
Yep.
Tough. Deal with it.
No, David.
I got my chance to speak. I'm almost done. So I'm trying to make a point here.
I think
let
a
me
number
finish
of
up,
people,
Charlie.
including
Give me
yourself.
1 minute, and I'll finish up, okay?
All right, you've
1
already
minute, I'll
gone
finish
like
up.
5 minutes.
So what I'm trying to make my point is, I'm trying to make the points about transparency. What are we looking for? We're looking for you to be more clear. I told you 1 minute. Give me 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
I'm asking you next
Got my
year
stopwatch on.
to be more clear. I'm already 20. Asking you next year to be more clear about how you present the budget, about the information you share with us, and share it up front. Share with the expendable trust funds. Share that information so we don't have to waste hours talking about it. It's right in the reports. Your reports provide very little information. Thank you.
Okay. Carissa.
Carissa Coro, Pennacook. This is my 20th in a row annual meeting.
And we went big, my husband and I, 2 nights. Yay, celebration. Sorry. We've had a lot of conversations about transparency, but not about accountability. And apologies are nice, but I think people should consider the school board in particular. It's not in this packet, unfortunately, but Mr. Wormold in his contract has a bonus that gets to be decided by the Andover and Merrimack Valley School Board, and I think you should really consider maybe not giving your bonus. That's a accountability measure. And also, can you please publish bonuses next year? And also, Ms. Bricky, I think that, again, accountability. I think this school board, the next school board, should really consider who's gonna head this up. And I know that things happen, I get school funding, all of that, but just like for good faith, let's listen to the mandate that you have all seen here. We have not always passed a budget in 20 years. And this is because people are upset about transparency, and it's easy for y'all to do that. Just quickly on test scores, I don't believe in test scores. I mean, I know they exist, but they don't really tell you much. Merrimack Valley School District does an excellent job of showing our communities what our students know and can do. 5th grade, exhibition. 8th grade, community project. Senior year, senior project. These are the examples of what our students know and can do. The test scores, they're useless. Thanks.
Thank you. Further question or comment?
Julian Ed Webster, I'd like to adjourn the meeting.
A motion has been made to adjourn the meeting. I will recognize that motion. Is there a second to that motion? It's been seconded. All in favor of adjourning the meeting, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you. Thank you to ballot clerks. Thank you to supervisors. Thank you to School District Clerk Kirsten Bean Warren. Thank you to that was on the rest of the agenda. No. I recognize the motion.
If we have new board members, newly elected board members, if you could approach the podium. Lorna Carlisle, are you in the house? Oh, there you are.
Where's your buffalo chicken sandwich?